Hi, my name is Tara and I'm 26 years old. About 3 months ago, I had to have emergency surgery to have most of my colon removed, and I decided to share my story because maybe I have friends and family who want to know more or don't know what happened and want to learn, or maybe you've had to have the same or a similar surgery and you want to know that you're not alone. I guess it all started about 5 months ago when it's kind of gross, but my bowel habits started to change. I started to get blood in my stool, and my bowel habits changed. I started to go more frequently, and it started to become painful to go. And over time, I was going more throughout the day, and it was still blood. I went to doctors, they couldn't find anything. Eventually they told me that I needed to go see a specialist, but I had to wait months. And it all came down to about 2 months after this had started happening. I started having to go to the toilet, having diarrhea like 5 times a day. Painful, and I would just have to go. All of a sudden I would just have to go, and I would have to like rush to the toilet. Being at work, that's not very nice. And after a few days I went to the doctor, and they told me that I had gastroenteritis, which is like a virus, and it's highly contagious, but it's just a really kind of nasty virus, and I would just have to wait it out. It would go away. I had no energy. I had to go home from work early. I remember having half a Snickers bar. I thought I was going to die. And a couple days later, I started having pain in my lower abdomen, which can only be described at the time that I knew as menstrual cramps. And I just thought that was very weird. But I thought it's probably just a part of the virus. But after a couple days of having it, I called the NHS hotline, and they told me I needed to go see the doctor. Well, actually, this time they told me I needed to go to the emergency room, the A&E, because with my symptoms, with the medication I was on, and the pain that I needed to go get it checked out. So I went, and they did find that there was infection in my body, which is normal for the virus, and they gave me pain medicine, and they gave me fluids. And once my kind of temperature came down and I seemed more hydrated, they let me go because they too were convinced that it was this virus. The next day, that was a Sunday, the next day on Monday, I thought I was getting better. I felt a lot better. I was able to eat more. But then the next day, I thought I was dying. I was hardly conscious. I didn't know at the time, but I had a fever. Just to get up from the couch to go to the toilet was, I dreaded it because it is just so much energy for my body. I didn't hardly eat anything. I remember, just because I knew I needed food to survive, I chopped cucumber. Don't even know how I did it. I was just so out of it. It was almost like I was delirious. I was just I wasn't good for anything, and I was barely conscious. And so that night was when things got really, really bad. It hurt so much to go to the toilet. It's so bad that I thought, forget this. I came in, I got my pillow and my blanket, and I went into the bathroom, and I lay down and I fell asleep. I was like, I'm not getting back up, and it's just, this is too much, this is too painful. And 3 different times that night I had horrible bowel movements, and after the last time, the pain that I had while I was going lasted for at least 4 hours afterwards. And I was just like, I just remember thinking, I can't live like this anymore. I would rather die than live like this anymore. So I called the NHS hotline again. I just needed help. I needed something. And they told me that I needed to go see the doctor. The guy didn't seem to really know what he was talking about, but it's okay. And I went there, and long story short, she gave me the option to go to the A&E, the emergency room, thinking that it might be appendicitis. And so I chose to go, and it's a good thing I did. I remember waiting, because it was a referral, I got in pretty quick. I waited just 5 minutes, but it felt like ages. I was laying there, and I wanted to die. And thankfully they took me in pretty much straight away, and they gave me fluids, pain medicine, and I found out I had a temperature of 39, which is 102 degrees Celsius. And no wonder I was like delirious and my brain was cooking. Like, I was really, really ill, and I had like a doctor see me, I had a surgeon see me, I had someone check me out for appendicitis. Obviously I didn't have appendicitis, and they wanted to run some tests because I had inflammation in my body, and they needed to figure out what was going on. I obviously was not getting better. I had started throwing up, wasn't able to keep anything down. Something was very, very wrong. And so they kept me in. They did an x-ray of my abdomen, and then at about midnight I had a CT scan of my abdomen. That went fine. I went to sleep, and about 4:30 I woke up, and I had pain, so I was requesting pain medicine. And about that time, these 3 doctors come in my room. It's 4:30 in the morning, like they should be at home asleep, right? And the surgeon, I find out he's a surgeon, proceeds to tell me that my colon is really, really inflamed, and I would probably need to have it removed because it could kill me. And I, at this point, didn't even really realize that you could have your colon removed. And I just remember being so scared and like crying. And he was great. He was a very nice guy, and he had a really good way about him, but I was still so scared. And the first course of treatment was to not go straight to the surgery, to put me on steroids, because a lot of people will react well to the steroids, and it calms everything down, and then you can just keep it under control with medication. So I could either have one of 2 or 3 things. I could have ulcerative colitis, I could have Crohn's disease, or I could have some sort of thing that happens from a bacteria, but that's not very likely because I live in the UK. So basically I needed to figure out what it was, first of all, because that determined the kind of treatment they would give me. And so they put me on the steroids, and actually I do start getting better. And over time they're pretty sure it's ulcerative colitis, not Crohn's disease, because of where the inflammation is. It's not affecting anywhere else, because Crohn's can affect you all along your abdomen, but colitis is just in the colon. And so I was getting better. They were able to start putting me on Ensure, which is like meal replacement drinks, and then they started to allow me to eat. And yeah, I was eating. I'd been eating for a few days, and then all of a sudden, after about a week, I started having fevers. I started having really bad upper abdominal pain, which was not normal. It was really hard to control the pain, even with pain medicine, and it was just really bad. I was having fevers all day, and it just wasn't good. And so the next day they came in, and they told me that they were sorry, but I was going to have the emergency surgery. I was just going downhill, and disease was able to get through the colon wall, and my colon could burst. The infection could spread to other areas of my body. I could basically go into organ failure, and I could die if I didn't have the surgery. And even though the surgery was very dangerous, they told me that my life was more at risk by not having the surgery, so I knew I had to have it, although I was really, really scared. Surgery was going to take about 4 hours, and so obviously I consented to the surgery because I needed to have it. And it was so emergency that they couldn't wait for anyone to come in and be with me if the operating room came available. Before anyone could get in, they'd have to take me straight away. But thankfully, you know, I was able to have people come in and be with me and just kind of have everything explained to them. And the surgeon was so nice. He called my parents in America and explained to them what was happening and why I had to have the surgery, which was really nice. And I just remember, you know, what helped me to not be so scared was a couple of things. First of all, was my faith, knowing that everything happens for a reason, and knowing that God had really had his hand on me this whole entire time up till now. He wasn't going to stop. And also, one of my pastors who's 70 something years old had recently a triple bypass, and he made it through fine, no complications. And I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. And they said that the fact that I am so young and usually healthy is a great thing. It helps me and means I would probably make it through the surgery fine. The only thing is the fact that it's emergency and my body is already quite ill to begin with increases my risk for infection after surgery and things, but they would do everything they could to prevent that. So I go into surgery, and I remember waking up and it was very painful, and they were there trying to keep my pain under control. That was number one priority, was to keep my pain under control. And they take me out after they get under control, and I have, you know, people waiting for me, and they take me to the high dependency unit, where I stay for a couple of days there. You know, the nurses are really attentive to you. The beds, you know, kind of move around so that you're not stuck in one place, and you really just kind of are there to lay there. Although they do try to get you as soon as possible up out of the bed, because that's very crucial for your recovery, so that, you know, your lungs don't get infected and that you really can get up and get going after your surgery. And I found out that my surgery ended up taking 5.5 hours. And the reason why is because they found out once they opened me up that my stomach was infected, and they had to clean out the infection. And so it was really, I had to have the surgery because obviously it had already caused my stomach to be infected, and that's why I was in so much pain. So I do pretty well. I had a catheter for my urine. I had a catheter up my butt. Basically, I had a tube by my incision to drain excess fluid. I had a tube that went down my nose into my throat to collect fluid from my stomach, because for a few days you don't eat or drink anything. They keep you on fluids. Well, you drink little bits every hour, but it's almost nothing. And I had, in the artery in my wrist, I had a line. In the artery in my neck, I had a line which had several posts, I guess you could call them, where they could take blood, they could give blood, they could, you know, put liquids like medication and stuff in there through there. And I also had a cannular IV. That was one thing with me that was a nightmare, was getting blood and keeping IVs, having to stick a needle and keep it in there, or even just to get blood at all, is a nightmare. I remember one night they had to stick me 8 times before they got it. Just a nightmare. But before I left the high dependency unit, they took the line out of my artery, and so anyway, they transferred me to the recovery ward, where I completed the rest of my stay. And I was on a morphine drip for 5 days, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this surgery is so great. Like, I was almost in no pain whatsoever. I had this button I could press. I mean, you can't overdose. The machine doesn't let you overdose, but you can press it as often as you want to. And it will, if you haven't had too much already, it will give you morphine. And I was like, this is great. And I remember like 5 days after, they were like, yeah, we should take you off this morphine now. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. The next 2 days were the worst, because I wasn't on morphine anymore, and I could feel, obviously they gave me tablets and stuff, but I could feel the pain of the incision. I could just, everything that was going on in my body. Basically what they had to do was they took most of my colon out, There's a chance for reversal later, but it's much later down the road. And because your colon is your bowel, where the waste leaves your body, they took out the colon, which was really injured and needed to get out, and they took a bit of my small intestine, pushed it through the abdominal wall, and that's where the waste now leaves the body, and there are bags that attach around to collect the waste. I have an incision in my abdomen that's about a foot long, going down the middle. That's healing very well. Basically, all the tubes and everything started to come out. I started to having to get up and go to the toilet, which was really hard. You become really thankful for being able to do basic things. And I just recovered pretty well. Actually, the nurses said that they hadn't seen anyone recover so well. I think it's due to the fact that if you just say, this is what is going on, and I'm just going to get up and do everything I need to do to get out of here, to get back to a normal life, you start to recover pretty quickly. I'm very thankful to God that I didn't get an infection or have any real setbacks. In that regard, I know a lot of people have had to go back to hospital multiple times and have loads of things wrong with them, but I've been very lucky, recovered very well. I've had minor setbacks. I had to go to the hospital once because I had some sort of bug, and they just, after surgery, they have to take extra care, and it wasn't anything in the end. But I've been seen by the surgeon. I'm doing very well. They have to give you certain medications for things you deal with along the way. I'll make a video about that later, but I'm really thankful to God and thankful to all the people at my church at Shoreline for the continued around-the-clock support. I'm thankful to God for just His hand being on this whole thing, and for just allowing me to have the best experience I can. I mean, the fact that I didn't get any infections, the fact that I've just continued to recover well, and just to be able to get back to my life. I did my first day of work on Monday, and I saw the surgeon. He said I was recovering well. It's just so amazing. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment on this. You can, send me a message on Facebook, email me, call me, text me, whatever. I'm open to talk about this. And thank you. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.